the far right have gone far. All these community outreach schemes and supporting local people against national problems. It's about time the far right gets exposed for what they really are.
All jokes aside, this documentary is over a year in the making from the BBC being funded by the UK taxpayer. So let's see this money go towards something I'm sure we can all get behind, that being of course subversive anti-white propaganda.
To them, I'm just someone who turns up to demos like a foot soldier, because they need numbers of these things. I'm meeting the organiser who calls himself Welsh nationalist, Joe Marsh.
Guys, that's Welsh Lives Matter. Welsh Lives Matter.
This Joe Marsh guy seems to resemble the North FC meme, so with that preconception in our mind, I'm going to assume that the way in which he expresses himself to this lefty BBC journalist is going to come across maybe to them as a little bit abrasive. This will be a recurring theme in this so-called expose, and I want to address this now. In online right-wing circles, there's always been a sort of edginess to the dialectic, and for those who are not, knee-deep in the lore, it can come across as extremely repugnant and borderline reprehensible. In addition to that, in the real world, right-wing meme chat doesn't always translate that well, and let's be honest, if you talk about using violence to resolve political issues, it's very difficult to sound like you're not just being incredibly cringe or just LARPing. And I'll explain more on that later, but let's carry on.
And if we didn't have fucking Jamaicans here and Africans stabbing people, we wouldn't have a knife crime problem. Or it would be minimal.
That actually sounds completely reasonable. That's something a less articulate Enoch Powell would say.
Marsh tells Dan why he thinks our government should ban migrants.
You've got foreigners who hate us, coming from countries that we've bombed, you know what I mean? It's a recipe for disaster, but they fucking know that. They know these people are going to come here and be hostile to us, and they just don't give a shit. It won't be their kids that get murdered, see?
That's another great point with an interesting layer of nuance you don't really hear from the mainstream. Our country and other European nations who have a similar immigration problem, they have also been involved in destabilizing many of the nations from where these migrants come from. It reminds me of these aid packages that we're sending to Gaza, and then the push to then accept Palestinian refugees. The UK is complicit in using our tax money to fund this war, and then what do we get in return? Well, we get to spend even more money bringing people over who we have helped displace, which in turn has far greater consequences than just wasted tax money.
Dan meets one of Marsh's friends, Roger, who's joined the protest.
No 30-day party, that's it. Yeah, we're all into prepping.
Oh, no.
Arming ourselves, things like that.
Yeah.
It's playing handbatching shotgun now.
Yeah, seriously, I'm
Prepper one, nothing proper one, yeah. Nothing about. So, we'll have 6 guns in the cabinet. It's from me and my family and a few friends, so.
Yeah.
So,
Do you reckon you'll need something like that then soon?
eventually, what's it? If you think you're going to fight these fucking migrants, that's what.
Yeah.
This is where the sort of cringe LARP begins, and remember, this is about exposing Patriotic Alternative. Is this guy affiliated with them? No, he isn't, but he shows up to the protests and banner drops and LARPs about owning guns to the new guy. This is sort of boomer LARP cringe, and again, he is not in any way affiliated with Patriotic Alternative in a formal way. So why are they even including this?
Our investigation exposes how members of this far right-wing group want new recruits to join what they call a race war on our streets, how they ask for cash to bankroll convicted racists, and how they peddle misinformation online and in communities to sow division.
A convicted racist? Is that a thing? What are the criminal repercussions for this? And Patriotic Alternative, does this group peddle the idea of race war on the streets? Well, since the BBC said, I'm sure it must be true, and I'm sure they're going to address it at some point during this hour-long expose. And then even the framing this, they do it to sow division, and that's it, according to the BBC. They believe these things because they just want to destroy everything that's good. That's how they actually frame this group. Never once do they actually address the underlying reasons for which the people end up in these groups. It's just hatred. That's it.
So how's it going? Yeah, good. This is my PA membership card. I'm number 430. Red squirrel, yeah. When I go to protests, I go like this. And I've told them I can't be outed.
It's pretty common, is it? They don't care, right?
No, they don't care as long as I'm there and I share their view of the world.
Look at how this is even being filmed. Why are they taking the time to shoot a shot under a railway bridge? This isn't some sort of film noir or a spy movie. It's just publicly funded propaganda to make it seem like what they're doing is dangerous, which it very clearly isn't.
Since becoming a member, I'm just getting like relentless messages every day talking about how we're all being replaced and how immigrants are like literally invading our country and people.
Patriotic Alternative say they're not racist. They're simply campaigning for the rights of white, indigenous British people.
It's the last one I had. It says this is what an invasion of an enemy army looks like.
He's literally showing a stream of foreign men entering a country which isn't theirs. That would constitute an invasion? What is he actually trying to say? That we're to not trust our lying eyes when we see these sorts of videos?
Our investigation starts in Llanelli at a protest against plans to move nearly 300 asylum seekers into the Stradey Park Hotel. What began as a local campaign about how the community might be affected quickly became a cause for PA.
Look at that hotel there. Look at that. Look. To be filled with scroungers. If anyone's watching and you're near, get down here because there's loads of people here. Look. Only a few weeks ago, there was that Syrian guy stabbing babies in prams, wasn't there? In France.
Yeah.
You know? That fella could have been in that hotel, couldn't he? And then he would have been stabbing babies in Llanelli.
I thought this was supposed to be propaganda, but again, Joe North FC Marsh strikes again with his infallible logic, which the documentary makes no attempt to refute anything he's just said.
What's the plan then? Just hanging these off the bushes,
Hang the banners up and then stand here flying flags. And then someone goes down and takes the videos.
All right.
We got banners supporting the farmers, banners about freedom of speech for patriots, and banners about housing the Welsh.
They are latching onto local causes. It almost feels like they're just casting the net to see what people will support them for.
Ah yeah, so casting a net to see whatever sticks. You mean this group of nationalists support other nationalistic causes? And then he scoffs at the idea that they attach themselves to local causes, which makes you think, you know, can you only protest, let's say if a migrant hotel is next door to you, but if it's an hour drive, then you have no reason to be there. This is none of your concern. Not a single valid or there's been no good point made from this BBC infiltrator yet.
Joe Marsh says that PA are peaceful and non-violent. But then Dan meets Aaron at the demo.
He's an activist who's turned up at other PA demos, including Stradey. He seemed really angry about the government and migrants.
They're going to exterminate us, destroy our country, our people and our families, and tell us racist. Or we can stand up to them, and they're still going to call us racist. You got two choices. Fight or die. Fight or die. Learn to resist or cease to exist. Your only choice is it.
So Aaron told me he used to work for HMRC, so Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, but he'd lost his job.
He'd been outed by anti-fascist campaigners Hope Not Hate over racist comments he'd made online, and after being spotted at demos, including this one against the housing of refugees and asylum seekers in 2023.
So he told me that it had been really intense.
First one to start and he had to big his fucking nose off. You best bet it's kill the first one who comes after you and the rest will shit their pants. Fuck them. And I mean that. I'm a dead alright. This little arm.
This is what I was talking about earlier. This guy, Aaron, he's a good example of the edgy online discourse meeting the real world. And it doesn't really come across that well. But this guy has had his job taken from him for just being a part of this. And he's given more than his time. He has given up his livelihood and any real chance of getting a, like a normal job with a company, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But it's not ideal, and I get it. And I understand why this guy is bitter and angry, and he feels that he is not represented. So while I can talk about how he should relax and tone down the edginess, he does somewhat embody the raw emotion that people feel in this country. People are angry, people are bitter, people do feel betrayed. And again, the BBC does not appear to engage these people at their level to understand anything what they're trying to say.
No more thoughts? Jim,
Nothing like that, no.
Good practice.
So you reckon you need there?
Yeah. It's good to know, like, yeah, if I want, I can fucking kill someone.
Maybe it's me, but I don't go around telling people that you should do martial arts so you can know how to kill somebody if necessary. This just comes across as very spurgy. But bear in mind, this BBC expose a year in the making, and so far this is what they have to hook in the audience. So far we've got North FC not missing the mark with some just common sense, and then just some bitter chud who was fired because he dared to attend a protest and say something a little bit off colour. I'm sure we're only just getting into it, so let's see what the BBC comes up with next.
PA is led by Mark Collett, who was a leading figure in the BNP and now streams videos with far-right influencers from around the world. People like David Duke, the former leader of the Ku Klux Klan.
This is about a tsunami of anti-white rapes and sexual assaults against our children.
His deputy is Laura Towler, seen here with her husband Sam Melia, who was jailed last year for intending to stir up racial hatred.
How does it feel, my love, that we don't care about being called racist? And that word has no power here. You think I'm racist? I don't care.
Okay, so the leader, Mark Collett, who has been on the scene for decades, talks to the far-right figures on the internet. Alright, so big deal. And then there's Laura Towler, who the BBC makes no further comment because she has had, as far as I'm aware, zero controversy. And then they make reference to her husband Sam Melia. Melina? I can never pronounce that. Who, the narrator points out, went to jail for spreading racial hatred. There's no further context given whatsoever. This is like saying O.J. Simpson didn't kill his wife and that waiter, or who's the other guy? And this is true because the jury said he was innocent. So what were Sam Melia's crimes if we actually look at them? Well, he put up stickers, legal stickers. It was declared that the content of the stickers were perfectly legal, but the judge ruled that his intent, so the judge declared, I can read your mind and I can determine your intention of putting up these stickers was to incite racial hatred. And that's all it takes to be put in jail for about 2 years in the UK.
Dan is starting to feel that wraparound service for himself. Undercover, he's told PA that he's sofa surfing and scraping by on casual work.
Joe Marsh suggested that if I wanted some work to make an extra bit of money, to get in touch with Aaron. You know, he used to work for HMRC, but, now works as a handyman since he was outed. Aaron has been in touch and he's texted me to say there's a job going, doing some wallpapering for a customer.
Alright, so this evil right-wing group, they accept membership of someone who is struggling. He's essentially one tier above being homeless, and he gets help almost instantly from this group. And who from? Well, it's from that bitter chud we just mentioned earlier. He is more than happy to help others in need, and he lets this BBC infiltrator help him with just some labouring jobs.
At the job, Aaron soon starts using the strongest racial slurs.
Right, how do you feel? You know, what you're doing? This is all I have to learn my living since the bastard little bloody fucking dogs. Well, I do that. I just emailed my boss, or like, look, boss, this shit's come out about me. Now, a lot of my comments were incitement to racial hatred and ethnic violence. I'm not admitting to that, because it's all fucking, hate speech laws. Yeah. Oh, I said, why everyone else is thinking. Got quite a long day. If they want to convict me for that, they can get fucking serious. Didn't police get involved or anything. Oh yeah, I'd be terror at my door. I thought we were a chat to you. Alright. Here's my phone. Oh. Cheers. Right, okay. Can't find any account with that on your phone. No, I can't. Because it was a brand new fucking phone. And I burned the old one. Literally on a barbecue. So they couldn't fucking get me.
I've never worked on a building site, but what he said about working in a field, I'm sure none of these labourers or workies would even turn their head at that sort of comment when they're on the job. They just wouldn't care. And this guy has been through a lot. Imagine posting something online that you see, 90% of the things you see on X these days. That causes the UK anti-terror police to come to your door, which is not the same as just the standard police. The way right-wing extremism is looked upon now, the bar is very, very low, and so if you're on their radar in any way, you do not have the same rights as anyone else who's investigated for a real crime. If you're picked up by the anti-terror police, which I think Sam Melnier was, for putting up stickers, when you're questioned, you actually don't have a right to a solicitor. This guy has every right to be as bitter as he is, and now, in a good deed to help others, it's now going to be used against him. Gee, I wonder if this whole experience is going to radicalise this guy even more.
They finish up for the day and drive off.
The communities that are the most diverse are people we want to get rid of, violently preferably.
I need to disavow, why would you prefer to use violence? This is the LARP that I was talking about. I am sympathetic to him in some ways, but this is just edgelord cringe. Trying to talk big in front of the new guy. I think that's all this is. But anyway, let's move on. Let's see how we can fix this issue of the native people working together to try to save their own country. Let's ask the opinion of a foreign woman.
Nobody in their right fucking mind.
Some of the language was completely abhorrent and I would argue definitely inciting.
Ramya Nagesh is a barrister who's written a book on hate crime. We showed her some of our findings.
He's talked about put them in camps until they agree to leave. If they don't, we'll shoot them. I mean, that's out and out violence and war. He was talking about how he destroyed his phone evidence. If there's a police investigation or a trial and you destroy evidence, you are potentially perverting the course of justice. So he may have been admitting to a crime right then and there.
If we didn't have fucking Jamaicans here and Africans stabbing people, we wouldn't have a knife crime problem.
There was that Syrian guy stabbing babies in prams. That fella could have been in that hotel, couldn't he?
I would argue that Mr. Marsh was trying to incite racial hatred. You don't use inflammatory words like that and expect them not to incite some sort of hatred for the people that you're talking about.
You heard it here first, guys. If you don't want the risk of foreigners killing children by letting them in by the thousands and not vetting a single one of them, that is incitement to racial hatred, therefore a crime in the UK. Hearing things like that give me a certain unease as I wonder what this woman would say if she stumbled across my channel. But anyways.
When they're in these groups in isolated places, they can share their views with each other without being worried about being called racists.
Nestled in stunning countryside, around 150 PA members were setting up camp.
I rang Mark Collett and he'd be said to go and check into the campsite and say we're from the Pennine Hikers Association because he was worried about them finding out who we were.
Hey guys.
Hi, yeah.
Are you with the Pennine Hikers? Yeah.
You're not turning up to a field and it's full of a bunch of skinheads with swastikas on their foreheads. It's everyday people.
Everyday people, they say. Doesn't this imply that involving yourself in these sorts of groups or sharing their views is completely normal as well. And remember, this is a hit piece funded by the state, and this is all that they can come up with.
Dan meets PA members from other parts of the country, including Tom, who's from the Midlands.
I'm thinking about making guide videos of how else we can tackle certain different races, list all their weaknesses, give that to us so we can know how to exploit that and give that as a wide knowledge. But
Like share it amongst the group.
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, that sounds very Spurgy, and this is what you're gonna find within these groups. While lots of normal people are involved, some of which I've met, but remember, this is a fringe political group. Therefore, you're going to attract people on the fringes of society, and Spurgs, they're on the fringes. And somebody wants to make some sort of racial handbook. To me, that just sounds dumb and very autistic. But that's all it is, just a silly idea. But that's enough to make it into the final cut of this film to expose the far right.
He tells Dan why he believes in PA and its aims.
The only organisation has a chance of eventually changing things and possibly even taking power.
I'm sorry to hit you with this atomic black pill, but PA will not usher in the Fourth Reich. It's just not going to happen. However, their role as a pressure group, similar to what Restore Britain is doing, that's probably the most viable way they have to influence UK politics in any meaningful way, in my opinion.
We bumped into Tom again. We'd just seen some hikers who, weren't white, and he presumed they must have been Muslim.
Well, what happened was they just stared at us, looked down upon us, but they had that stand, so when they have their pants, they put that kind of racist. So if we were going to come down,
Have you ever had problem before when you've been out to?
Frankly, no. But I've been unfortunate to be by, which isn't good behaved, where you can't go seek to chop something you have to kind of suppress. So there's always that kind of challenge, if you know what I mean.
Again, this guy is a LARPing Spurg, and I think anything he does would only detract from Patriotic Alternative's message. But let's go to our foreign correspondent to see what she has to say about it.
It's more than him just saying, I don't like people who aren't like me. He's talking about distributing guides and committing violence.
But the freedom of speech is a cherished right for many people in this country. Where does that fit in with much of what you've seen?
I can't exercise my freedom of speech if it's going to potentially harm somebody else. And the same for these people as well. If they're using their freedom of speech protections in order to advocate for war, spread lies about specific groups, and really encourage hatred of particular groups, which could then lead to violence, they're abusing freedom of speech.
Yeah, so freedom of speech exercised in the way that I don't like, this should be criminal. End of story.
Camp was packing up. Leader Mark Collett was already planning their next big event. It was activists to do in their communities.
We've got to do things that actually get results. So, like, if there's an asylum seeker centre and we can all get there and protest against it and shut down, that's a result.
That's what you want us to do locally, then?
Joe down in Wales,
Nestle.
that got shut down. There was 2 in Yorkshire that we got shut down, and there was another one somewhere else. So, and that makes real difference for local people, because if you're working a shitty 9-to-5 job, you're worrying about money, whether you can make ends meet, then all of a sudden you're worrying about whether your daughter's going to get because there's 250, men of fighting age just turned up who are eyeing her as she walks to school. And then a group comes in, gets that thing shut down and removes that worry. That's a positive in people's lives.
Now that sounds good to me, and I think it would to a lot of normal people. Does the BBC think this clip is going to make Mark Collett look bad?
Death at a dance class in Southport, sparking riots.
Clashes this evening.
Shot and grief.
Horrific knife attack.
The suspect is said to be a young black man originally from Cardiff.
People come from very, very low IQ countries. They have low impulse control.
Joe Marsh called for mass deportations.
Are there any black people originally from Cardiff, that key word originally. I think what they meant to say was an African killed 3 white girls.
Hey mate, how's it going, right?
Yeah, good.
Getting some stuff on your phone?
Yeah, so I've been getting a lot of messages from about Southport, and I spotted someone in the riots who I'd seen in the summer camp. This guy who calls himself the English Wanderer.
So he's got a free Sam Melia t-shirt on, so PA using something that's getting worldwide attention to get themselves noticed.
Yeah, Mark Collett was saying that MPs would rather the streets run red with the blood of children than deport a single migrant.
Now, that's very profound from Mark, and he's right. We can be mad, angry, or hateful towards those who should not be here, but remember, they're only here because we've been betrayed. That should be the focus of our energy to bring about the change which we need.
Even when police confirmed the man accused of the murders was British, born in Cardiff to Rwandan parents, it didn't stop Joe Marsh.
He's not Welsh, he's African, right?
And as the violence continued to spread across the country, he gave advice to his followers.
That's always the spin you hear these days, and when you hear that, that he's actually British, that should make you realise something very important. When you see crime stats, and when it shows how foreigners commit a disproportionate amount of these violent crimes, you need to bear in mind that the numbers are actually worse, because Axel Rudikabana killing 3 white girls, this is counted as a British person committing the crime. This is why, even though I've just referenced stats, we really shouldn't be bothering to use them anymore to make our points, because we're beyond that now, and stats can be used to really make up any narrative that you want.
People shouldn't be calling demos at mosques, right? If you're going to do one outside a migrant hotel or in the town centre, right? Outside a mosque is just asking for trouble, and it makes us look like the bad guys at this. I think if it's a hotel full of migrants, people would be more understanding.
Are they trying to conflate that? And I'm not having a go at Joe North FC Marsh here, but the BBC alluding that his comments resulted in a riot outside the migrant hotel, I think it's just pure conjecture. The BBC will never admit that the 2024 riots unfolded in an organic way.
The next day, large crowds gathered outside a migrant hotel in Tamworth, hurling petrol bombs. And at another in Rotherham, there was an arson attack. We don't know if any of the protesters were PA members or followers of Joe Marsh, but could such comments have fueled the violence that erupted during the summer?
That's a great question. Could these comments result in riots? I mean, maybe. I'm leaning towards, and this is a controversial take, I think the riots unfolded because once again, a foreigner committed one of the most horrendous crimes imaginable, and this deeply affected the wider native community. This attack was the straw that broke the white man's back, as we have been subjected to dozens upon dozens of these attacks for decades now.
So again, it's very evocative, fear-mongering language, which again, I would argue is designed, or at least is likely to, incite racial hatred.
Regarding the activity outside the migrant hotel, telling people not to go to mosques, is there any defence there, given what did happen?
Well, if we took that in isolation, yes, he was just saying, go protest outside a hotel, and people are allowed to protest. They can protest peacefully. When we look at everything all together, we could argue that given his followers, given his history, and given the other things that he says, he is pushing something more than just a peaceful protest. And I think that that would fit very firmly into a criminalised offence of inciting racial hate.
Yes, so what he said was legal and perfectly fine, but I'm going to project what I think his intent was. That intent is illegal, therefore he should be arrested for saying something legal. I hope that clears things up here.
They also bankroll PA members who are convicted racists. They call them political prisoners and are asking Dan to support them.
So they've been asking for money for different people for a while. So for Sven Longshanks, they've raised over £10,000 for him.
His real name is James Allchurch. he was part of the Lantwick Major protest and ran a neo-Nazi podcast described as vile by the judge who jailed him for 2.5 years, saying he was bent on inciting racial hatred.
One of the detectives said he appeared as the devil himself. I mean, this guy was a real jerk.
I wonder what he said, or will they just brush over that and let you fill in the blanks with what he could have said?
They've raised almost £70,000 for Sam Melia.
Melia, who's married to PA's deputy leader, was described as an anti-Semite with Nazi sympathies by the judge who jailed him. But Marsh and the group still back him.
Right, this banner here, guys, is for Sam Melia, who's doing 2 years.
This is someone who's been convicted of stoking racial tensions.
Another racist getting PA's cash is James Costello, who's serving 5 years.
Send them back. We will not be replaced.
Costello was editor of a website which called for a racial holy war.
We are Patriotic Alternative. Freedom for James Costello and freedom for all political prisoners. Thank you.
Are you telling me that in addition to putting up stickers, as we said earlier, which were completely legal, but holding, shall we say, controversial political views, which are also legal to have, but because our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, said free speech is an integral tradition to Britain. But all these legal things wrapped together made the judge decide that he should just go to jail anyways. Remember, Sam Melia went to jail for almost 2 years, I think, for what was essentially a thought crime. Yet those who commit far worse crimes sometimes never ever see a jail cell. Hearing this sort of thing, this is what radicalizes people. I really don't know much or anything about James Costello. I was hoping the BBC would share exactly what he said to provide me the context I need to draw my own opinion. But instead we just get an offhand comment that he managed a website that then called for a holy war. And this is the BBC's chance to show how crazy these people are. But to me this shows that if they were to dive into the detail, just like Sam Melia's case, people would realise that it's all just a bunch of bullshit. Someone told me that they put a filter over this documentary to give it a darker, gloomy feel. They might have, but it's hard to tell because this is just how the UK looks most of the time.
Dan is now so trusted by PA, they've asked him to help with security at their upcoming annual conference.
When we eventually arrive, it seems quiet, for now. But I had to be on my guard the whole time. When I didn't go there, the hall was already packed. One of their guests of honor was an Australian white supremacist. They gave him this big build-up.
Our fifth speaker today is a man with a jaw like an anvil. It's Blair Cottrell!
This is coming up to the last part of the documentary. There's another part with an interview with Mark Collett, and you can find the full interview online because the BBC has obviously chopped it up in order to try to make him look bad, which it really didn't. It did make him appear to be quite defensive, but only because they were just ruthlessly attacking him with disingenuous interview techniques. But let's focus on the PA conference. We're about 40 minutes into the documentary. Surely, this is where we just see how evil and despicable these people really are.
But away from the stage, Cottrell spoke to Dan and others about crime in his country and how he'd sort it out.
We have a problem with home invasions, theft of the home. Yeah, it's always happens. An old lady was stabbed to death by a gang of African kids. An old white lady who comes from this, right? When you look at the way things work in Africa, the only language they understand is violence. And the only way to effectively respond to a crime that committed that's as heinous as what I just described is you literally skin when you hang a few of their bodies up across the traffic points. Just theoretically, of course, it can't burn it. I'm not just saying this. That is practically the most effective way to actually send them a message, and then they finally grow up. They can't do anything less than that. They just get escalated. But they don't take it seriously. Unfortunately, you can't talk them down. You can't do something. No, you have to use brutal force.
They have to skip over Blair's speech and focus on the dinner conversations, which he appears to be using hyperbole to make a point with dealing with barbarism in your country. This actually reminds me of a quote that in a documentary that we covered before actually on this channel.
If you're too soft, you're too soft. Someone jerk with her, you slap me. You be nice to them and you think they're gonna be nice to you. That's right.
Isn't that the way people usually behave towards each other? If someone's nice to you, you be nice to them?
Yeah. Yeah.
So well, what goes wrong?
But you be too nice.
Yeah, you're not the easiest group of boys and girls to work with. Is hitting the way the school should be run?
That's all.
I went for a walk around and I saw they were selling merchandise, books and badges.
It upsets the liberal people. Well, I've learned.
It's a lest we forget badge. The poppy and wearing an England football shirt. They're also selling these, which, see that? Don't unpack, you're going back.
Wow, this is real journalism. I can't believe they exposed the pins and badges of PA. How could they possibly recover from this?
Outside, Dan hears PA leader Mark Collett boasting about how yet again they'd lied to book the venue.
This was Uncle Derek's 50th birthday we just enjoyed. Everyone books under a false name. You know, we've got a system of doing it. And we're just going to keep doing it like this because it works.
And here, Mark Collett committing espionage. This is the irredeemable behaviour that the BBC has been leading up to by lying to a venue so you don't get exposed.
Inside, Tom, who says he's started work with the Inland Revenue, tells Dan how he deals with people who aren't white.
I'm interacting with non-whites. I sometimes deliberately give them bad information which sounds interesting. Like I'm trying to sabotage them.
As I said, this is spurgy behaviour. You can't really... Maybe it's a mindset thing, but I'm just good to, all people, regardless of who they are. I think taking the time to think of ways to purposely sabotage people, that only breeds more negativity within yourself. And I really don't think that's a good thing. And I think what this guy is missing, what I alluded to earlier, is that we should focus our energy in a more positive sense towards ourselves and where we need to fight. It needs to be directed towards those who brought in this multicultural hellscape that has been brought upon us. And there is some more footage of this guy, and he's just again being more of a spurgy edgelord. And that's it. You might think I'm optics cucking here, but at a fancy dinner for a serious political movement, or claiming to be, and you're showing people at the dinner table live leak videos of Indians being killed by leopards or whatever, which he does do this later on. I'm sorry, but that is just retarded.
I spoke to Tom's regional organiser, who'd overheard some of the comments he'd made.
I mean, I've had to tell him to wind it in social media. He was using racial slurs and saying the full thing. Yeah. I have to tell him a couple of times. I'm not saying I'm going to boot you out of the game, but I've implied that you will be asked to leave and you will arrest you. You're very much a spur wrangler. I find it not. You have to set the spurs as getting you says arrested.
A Spurg Wrangler. That frames this perfectly. And I have met people, by pure chance by the way, who were involved in PA until being thrown out. And they were complete Spurgs you want nothing to do with. But again, fringe movements will attract fringe people. And that's okay. But it's something that needs to be recognised, and I think, PA is aware of that. It's just how do you filter these people away? And there really isn't much else when I've skimmed through it. On the event, the teacher guy is deluded about PA possibly being in government. And then the Pakistani barrister from earlier says her piece, which, I mean, it's just the same as what you'd expect. It's all incitement and they should all go to prison. And then it leads into the Mark Collett interview, which I'll try find the link for the full video in the description. So let's just wrap this up. Who else are they going to ask at the end of this documentary for something insightful? that this documentary's been alluding to. This thing that's been funded by the UK taxpayers. Let's take a listen here. This is the conclusion.
They may not engage in terrorism, but are they creating a climate that's conducive to it? I would argue yes. Are they creating a climate for violence, hate crime? Yes.
When Dame Sara Khan became Britain's first counter-extremism commissioner, she called for new laws to ban groups like PA.
Having assessed and analysed the harm that they are causing to our country, how they're attempting to mainstream extremism in our country, we've seen their recent activity and their contribution towards public disorder in the summer riots. They should absolutely not be allowed to operate with impunity. And I made that absolutely clear in my report from 4 years ago. The fact that they still are, and I think their activity has worsened, I think is devastating.
Again, let's not try to meet them at their level. Let's just ban, censor, and imprison. That's the only way to handle this, Chud. Listen to this other foreign woman tell you exactly that. She is fighting to save you. And that's just it. The big BBC expose of patriotic alternative. Even with the editorial magic wand to make them look as evil as possible, did they really manage to do this? If we minus the Spurgs, was there anything bad? Let me know what you think down below. But anyways, thanks for watching. Until next time.